Hi, guys! Yay! Welcome to another edition of the Movie Club's live discussion. I'm actually very excited about this discussion because it's only like a super cool movie, which is none other than Scarface. So, yay! Say hello to my little friends. I'd like to welcome William and Lucas Brown. Hi, guys! What's up?
What's going on? Hey, Razz, what's up? We are elated. You know what I'm saying? I am here with my mangled Corona beard, right? Straight, mangy, and ready to go.
Very nice. Lucas, how you been, buddy?
Say hello to my little friends, really.
Well, the funny thing is neither of you is little, which makes this even better. I mean,
hashtag Chunky Lives Matter, all right?
Okay, so yeah, we have a small film that we're discussing here, which is Scarface. Very exciting stuff. I was actually very happy for this film to be the film of discussion because, it's only like one of the most famous crime films of all time. Massive pop culture relevance. Scarface. I mean, everybody knows Scarface. Everybody has an opinion about it. It's a remake of the 1932 Scarface. It was in 1983, and it captured the heat of Miami drug life, and it became such a big part of pop culture. I haven't seen this movie in a while, but my God, I cannot forget those quotes. I was quoting it the whole time while I was rewatching it. All the big quotes: "Say goodbye to the bad guy." Awesome stuff. I actually enjoyed it very much. This film actually, when it came out, it was not as popular as it is now. It was deemed very extremely violent. It was deemed very over the top and grungy and things like that. And then later, critics and people came to reassess it and appreciate it a lot, which is pretty cool. Also, Brian De Palma directed this, written interestingly by Oliver Stone. He penned the script. And I mean that's a dynamic duo right there. And Brian De Palma got into a lot of trouble getting this film R-rated. It was actually initially X-rated, and he kept going back and recutting the film until they gave him the R rating that he wanted. And then they actually never gave it to him, but he had an appeals board, and he got some, experts in narcotics to convince them that this movie is a very good depiction of the drug life, and it's a very good anti-drug film, like a warning tale. And this convinced, and that it should be seen by people, and that convinced him to do the R rating. And he actually went back to the first cut of the film that was rejected the first time, because he's like, nobody's gonna notice these changes, and actually released the first cut that was rejected, that was gonna get an X-rated film. So then this film was released, and it created a lot of controversy and hype, and it's so dark, and it's so gritty, and it's so violent, and shows a lot of drugs, mountains of drugs, and then it became part of history, especially Al Pacino and his one of the most iconic characters of all time as Tony Montana. So first impression, guys. Hello to everybody in the comment section. We have a big crowd. Hi everybody. Big shout out to Yasser, Neo, Millie Page, and Yusuf.
Everybody like, comment, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, like, share, subscribe. So, yeah. First impressions, I'll start off with you, William. Not your first impression 20 years ago, but did you rewatch it? How do you find it nowadays?
What are you talking about? Look, this film is the American dream. What are you talking about? This is why you immigrate to the United States. So you can go to customs and say, I want my freedom right now. I want my human right. Right. So if you understand anything about American history, and look, I know you say not 20 years ago and everything else, but that was the height or the beginning of what would be one of the drug epidemics in the States. And so it became very popular. So by the time I was a teenager in the early 90s, the cocaine and crack era had hit, and it was in full swing. And I know many people, to my sad and most unfortunate surroundings who aspired to be Tony Montana.
Yeah.
So he was a role model to many. And again, it's a masterpiece. And I'm not gonna. And I know and this is the dark side of the American dream.
What do you think, Lucas?
I mean, I watched it for the first time over the last sort of week. I watched it a couple of times, and I hadn't watched it since I was about 25, so nearly 10 years ago. And I had forgotten, like, how
cool
actually gruesome it is. Because, like, it's actually, like, got a lot more gore than a lot of the horror movies from the time.
Yeah.
In terms of the kind of realism and the kind of Saw-esque torture porn that we're into these days.
Yeah.
And it lets you know in the first 15 minutes it's not here to mess around.
Yeah. No joke.
The scene in the scene in the motel. Like, I'm sorry, like if you came here for candy, like you're gonna have a bad time. Like that's just the way that it's gonna go.
Yeah.
And I think it is kind of going back to what William was saying, it definitely is a depiction of the American dream, but also I think the most poignant line in the kind of opening sort of 20-30 minutes is probably when Frank turns around to him and goes, "Never underestimate the next guy's greed."
Mm-hmm.
No.
And that's one of the main themes,
Yeah,
which
exactly,
we will touch
exactly.
on.
That in and of itself is a massive theme within this kind of corruption of the American dream message that the film tries to send.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
cool.
people who aspire to be Tony Montana tend to aspire to be Tony Montana because they want the money, but they don't realize that they don't realize that with the money and the power and the women comes all that danger to their life and everything that they own.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, look, guys, this is freaking Scarface. Like, guys, okay? Guys, it is a masterpiece. And a lot of people actually, I feel like a lot of people are hard on this movie because it's not The Godfather, right? Because it's not highbrow and it's not Goodfellas. Like, I hear this a lot. I don't agree. I think this movie is brilliant. And it isn't, it could be, and this is something we can discuss, it could be a little flawed in certain aspects where it's not adds the quality of The Godfather, but this is a character story, okay? And it's not as much, it is about the world, it is about the American dream, but it's a lot more about the person who has misinterpreted the American dream because he comes from a criminal background, he comes from Cuba, he comes from a communist background. All he knows is crime. So to him, he interprets the American dream in the most criminalitic way possible and goes on this rampage, sure. But the reason why The Godfather is so cool is because it's the hero's journey, okay? But for somebody who is definitely not your typical interpretation of what a hero is, okay? So Tony Montana comes from nothing, right? Comes from absolutely nothing. You guys are familiar with the hero's journey, right? Joseph Campbell, right? Hero comes from nothing, gets a call to action, crosses the threshold, which is literally the border in the beginning of the film, right? Finds a mentor, goes through trials and tribulations, finds love, friendship, enemies, it has to face his greatest fears and, rise and fall, except in this, and he gets his just rewards. But in this, his just rewards is, a punishment. So it's just it's a classic tale of rise and fall. It is the ultimate tale of rise and fall. You're talking about greed. Exactly. Tony Montana wants everything. This is his main drive as a character, but it's also his major flaw. It's his downfall, right? Because he wants everything, he never feels like he has anything. And that leads him to eventually going from getting everything to having nothing, right? And losing it all just as fast as he got it. And it's just such a fascinating thing to watch. We like to watch characters like go through change. Just this movie has so many changes. The Tony Montana we meet in the first 10 minutes, Like, he's the same, but I mean, his world and his situation changes so much. He goes through rapid change. And touching on what you're saying, William, reflecting America and our modern world changed so much that it could hardly keep up with its own self, which is exactly what happens to Tony, you know? So it's really, it's fantastic. It's a commentary on capitalism and on communism and just how it can be used for really, really dark things. It has a lot of themes, but of course, the thing that makes this film, all of these things are true and everything, but guys, come on. It's Al Pacino as Tony Montana. It's just, to me, this is my favorite performance for him. I know that, you know, him as Michael Corleone is a whole, like, a lot of people regard that as his finest hour. I don't think so. He carries this film. He took a character who is essentially a horrible person. Like, when you think about it, he's such a horrible person. He's a jerk, you know? You're not supposed to like Tony Montana, but you, William, are saying people ended up idealizing this horrible human being. Why? It's because of Al Pacino's performance. He made him such a charismatic, enigmatic, charming, likable person that you can't take your eyes off of him. You cannot take your eyes off of him the whole time he's on screen. It's just amazing. Such an iconic character. He brought this charm and cool and fascination and energy. Insane. And like you hang on to every word he says. Like, forget the big quotes, you know, the say goodbye to the bad guy and all this stuff. Forget that. Even when he's just like somebody's talking to him, telling him like, stay 30 feet. He's like, don't tell me what to do. You don't have to tell me twice. He's just so captivating. You just hang on his every word. And this is like a feat. Like, this is a genius performance. Genius. And the cool thing about Tony Montana, which what I like and what makes him likable, that's also in the script by Oliver Stone, is that he's a man of principle. He's a man of principle. He has sort of a moral, even though it's so like it's completely messed up, but he has it. He sticks to it, which makes him likable. You understand him. You understand what he's with, what he's against. And he's just a fascinating person to watch rise and a fascinating person to watch fall. So, you know, to me, Scarface is Tony Montana. That's the thing that stands out the most. It's that character. I'd watch 500 movies starring this character, you know? What do you think?
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? So going back to what you said, when people want to compare this to Goodfellas, look, street criminals are a different brand than guys that are in organized crime.
Yeah.
That lifestyle doesn't play out the same. So, for example, I know you hated Razz, but when I was a kid, that was during the time of what we had was John Gotti. In New York City, he was known as the Teflon Don. And the whole city loved him. He was an Italian guy. Even in black neighborhoods, they would come and hand out turkeys. I saw it, like I said, I saw it myself, you know, growing up. And so what happens is that for Tony Montana, for a lot of guys that were in street gangs or like the underdogs, so to speak, people who were undereducated and didn't have access to certain things, you know, for many people in that lifestyle, that was a roadmap to success, right? And a lot of guys on the streets, like Tony Montana, are highly charismatic people. They're very intelligent people. And the guys that did become Tony Montanas, if they didn't get killed, because I remember the government passed something called the RICO charge. And so so when you reach the Tony Montana level and you get caught, then you end up, you end up on the, you end up, getting charged with the RICO charge.
And I like that they touch on that they touch on the moment he became so big. Not only was he, like, they started going after him, the IRS and stuff, but also they started employing him for political reasons, right? Which means, like, even like the anti-crime sentiment is also capitalistic by nature. It's a sham. It's an opportunity. You have a big criminal, it's an opportunity to do some politics, like represented by the narcotics guy who asks him for a bribe and whatnot. It shows you that this is what the capitalism allows for. This is what the American dream allows for. I mean, Stephen was saying in the comments, did Tony Montana misinterpret the dream, or does the American dream allow for people like Tony Montana to rise to power?
It allows for people like Tony Montana.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
have you read American history?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about? It allows for people like Tony Montana.
Exactly.
And so I would venture people, like, saying, I know a lot of you guys get, bored of me saying it, but I grew up in that world. I'm from I'm from the projects of Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. We called it Roosevelt Housing Projects. Jay-Z, Biggie Smalls, Little Kim, these type of rappers are from there. And then, East New York, Brooklyn, and I grew up in LA outside of Compton. And so, when the whole drug thing, again, was up and on the rise, like I said, movies like this started to become very popular because it's like what you said in terms of, Oliver Stone was kind of ahead of the public at the time. And then, and so what happened was is that as America started to become more exposed to the subculture of street gangs and, and drug dealers and everything else with the rise of the drug epidemic, the film started to make more sense to people. Where maybe previously, depending on where you're from in the United States, the movie doesn't make any sense.
Because you'd be too sheltered, yeah. What do you think, Lucas, about Tony Montana, what he represents, and him as just an iconic character?
I mean, I think obviously Tony Montana has left a mark on pop culture. I mean, we don't need to know that there's 100 million, 200 million people that have seen that video with The Lonely Island, for example, where Michael Bolton spoofs him. There's all kinds of references to that. Tony Montana is a name that comes up in any kind of discussion about gangster media culture and that kind of thing. Particularly in the UK, there's a lot of grime rappers that will drop the Tony Montana name as someone to aspire to. And I mean, to look at this is a cultural impact of a film that's nearly 40 years old now, and it's crazy. But like the other thing about it, going back to your idea of looking at him like a Campbell's hero. He kind of isn't, I would say, because the hero's journey is supposed to be circular, right? Where you have the call to action, etc., etc., etc. But for him, that's the thing. For him, it doesn't go set up payoff like the hero's journey does. And this is going back to our conversations that we used to have about Game of Thrones, right? It's action versus consequence.
No, but the way that it represents the hero's journey is that, like, the circular, the narrative circular is that he starts as nobody at home. He's just another person, and then he goes on this journey, and he's forever changed. And then at the end, there's a journey back home. There's no place like home, Dorothy type of situation where the hero comes back, and the world is back as it was, but he is forever changed by the experience. Like there's a journey back home, and in this, you don't take it literally, but he starts with nothing. He starts being a dishwasher, and then he rises and goes through all of these trials and tribulations, and then he goes back to nothing. He loses everything and goes back to having zero. This is what I mean by how it goes in a circle. And again, he's not the typical hero of the hero's journey. He's sort of an unexpected hero of the hero's journey. You know what I mean? When you look at it, that's why his tale is so attractive, and it's so easy for us to just sit there and watch it happen, because it feels Shakespearean, right? For me, Scarface is so Shakespearean, especially with all the tragedy that happens. It's Macbeth, but he's Cuban in Miami, and he snorts a mountain of cocaine. But it's Macbeth.
It's all right. Scotland is the Cuba of the UK. Anyway, so.
I wouldn't know. This is white people comments that I do not understand, Lucas.
Let's not. I don't know if Yasser's in the chat. Just so you know, guys know that Yasser does live with Tony Montana. So Yasser is living with the Tony Montana of his own.
Who?
Huh?
Who?
His wife.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Huh?
I hope she's not snorting mountains of, I don't know.
No.
Was she the one that first realized that masks were going to be a really big selling commodity and got them on Amazon quickly before they shut her down?
Have you met her? She talks like she has the same accent and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. Well, anyway, so that's what I mean. So it's just such a fascinating character.
Also, it's confirmed in the comments. Yasser has confirmed in the comments it's in writing.
I do live with Tony Montana. Okay, well that's pretty cool. All right. So every night you say good night to the bad guy. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. But even for me, like when you talk about like that film, right? And so it's the same thing of like what Razz was saying, like coming from nothing. And I think the reason why he felt like he didn't have anything is because, again, when you look at America, the bigotry and everything else. So despite having everything, he was never fully accepted by the society, right? In terms of, him having the outbursts and everything like that. So, again, when he went to the restaurant, right? He said, you need people like me.
I love that scene. I love that scene.
But my favorite part of the film is when he went home to his mom and his sister, and he wants to come and say, "Mom, look at your son! I made it. He's a success." And then she goes, "Where did you get this money, Tony?
I don't want your money."
And he's like, "But Mom, you gotta ruin it for everybody." And so it's so when you look at, but that's why he felt, Razz, to your point. That's why he felt that he never had enough because it was. Despite his success, which a lot of people from minority groups may feel in the United States, is that despite his success, he was never fully accepted. And so, although I had the money, the things, and everything else, I don't have the love and the admiration that I'm supposed to have from achieving the American dream.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, to him, it's like you get the power, then you get the money, the power, and then the women, and whoever
the respect, but he didn't get the respect, and that's what he felt, and that's why he felt like he was. Like I said, that's what he felt like he was where he was, right? And again, and that comes from the street level crime mentality, right? So he had made enough money to actually transition into organized crime and go legit and have kids that can go to Harvard and Columbia and like I said, and all of these things. But he just wasn't there yet with it.
I mean, it also doesn't help that this is where Michelle Pfeiffer's character comes in, where she reinforces this lack of acceptance, right? She never accepts him, she never loves him, and he in his head he thought that like money and power is what's gonna do it, right? Like he saw her, he fell in love with her, and he was kind of obsessed with her, and he's like, once I become rich enough and powerful enough, she's gonna love me. And he kept going back to her.
Quaalude, she'll love me in the morning.
Exactly. Yeah. He kept coming back to her every step of the way. Whenever he gains a little bit of power and money, he comes back to her. And then, she's still cold. And then in the end, he literally, like, he killed her husband, like, or her boyfriend or whatever, and took his place. He's like, now I have everything he has. Why, you gotta love me now. So I think that's also something that really pushes his character. And it's another thing, William, is that he's a pit of greed, which is what Lucas was pointing out. And that's, capitalism is, systematic, or the film can argue, and some people would argue that capitalism is systematic greed, right? It's a pit that no matter how much you fill it, it's never enough. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and out of everybody's control. And I think that's sort of what De Palma is trying to portray here with Tony, is that no matter what happens, he's a pit. Everything goes in and just goes out, and he's never full, and he never stops wanting.
But it wasn't just money. It wasn't just
everything.
money. It was also the people in his life. His sister. Yeah, his sister,
wants the world.
His mom,
And that's the thing. That's why he put that's in the middle of his house. He has that statue of the world is yours. He will not stop until he has the whole world, but he can never have it. You can never have everything. You have to at some point stop the hubris, and be satisfied. But that's who he is. And the thing is, the tragedy is that his drive comes from that insatiable greed, right? And that's what makes us so drawn to him, makes us like him, because we always like to see a driven person who's going after something like a maniac. And you're like, yeah, get it, son. But then that same quality about him that got him so successful is what destroys him. That's the Shakespearean tragedy element there. And that's also what we are, that's how it is sort of a cautionary tale for us, because we all have this greed, we all go after things, and we all don't feel satisfied with what we have. And when we're rooting for him because we're rooting for ourselves, because we want power, whatever we define as power or our goals, we go after it like crazy people, and we don't appreciate what we have. And then eventually the movie is like, hey, if you're like this, you're gonna end up with absolutely nothing. So that's why
I think one of the things that's also really interesting about the story is that before he overcomes one status hurdle, he's already got his sights on the next one. Like when so coming to America, and then the murder in the tent city, and then the guy who drives up in the Cadillac while he's washing dishes, then then Frank, who bossed around the guy in the Cadillac and he replaced him, and then he replaces Frank, and then the other guy over in Colombia. Like every single time he starts moving towards the next level within the kind of hierarchy, I suppose you could say, the step beyond that is just outside of his reach. But then he reaches that pinnacle alongside the guy from Colombia, right? When he does the deal behind Frank's back and becomes the guy.
Yeah.
But then he has nothing else to aspire to, and then he has nothing. He's sitting there in a he's sitting there in a marble bath with 20-inch TV in front of him, which, in the 80s was a huge deal.
My God, that bath looked good, you guys. My God, like I would turn to a life of crime if I can get that bath. My God.
And his wife, the person.
Badly. I will give up. I will give in to.
Okay, should I just let you filibuster?
I need that bath, Lucas. That bath looked good, man. Do you know how stressed I am? Man, that bath is my God, bro.
I'm not your husband. Your husband's in the chat. Get him.
I need that bath. My God, man, it looked good.
But what I'm saying is, like, the person that he did all this for, I think the spark that lit within him was when he saw her the first time, and he was like, what does he have that I don't have? Because his ultimate goal was Elvira, right? Yeah. That was the ultimate goal, and then he did everything for the sake of getting her.
What is Elvira to him? That's the question. What is she?
She's a prize.
What she
She's a prize.
It's not.
She's a prize. She's an idea.
It's no. Here's the thing, right? Again, because you got to remember, I'm coming from Cuba, right? So for me to be wealthy, to be successful, and to have a pretty white female, right? I mean, let's just call it, what it is. To have a pretty white female, again, she represents.
We have this as Arabs. We have this as Arabs.
Thing of him having it all. She's one of the, I guess, many MacGuffins, along with the drugs, the cars, and the money, and everything else.
And the beautiful blonde women. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's part of it's that appeal, right? It's that measure of success, It's when you look at this really successful, powerful man, he has a beautiful car, he has a beautiful, like William is saying, a beautiful white wife. This is either from somebody who's poor and rising up, and also for an immigrant, For us, like when people from minorities, we immigrate, and it's like such a big deal to have to get a white wife. Like, look, I got this, it feels like, look how successful I am in Linden, which is what we call London, in Linden, and we come back with a white wife with blue eyes, and like she's beautiful, and like it's a weird way to measure success entrenched in our society, that I think it's part of, like William is saying, it's part of what he grew up with in Colombia.
Yeah, but it's how America marketed itself, right? So the same, we're all seeing the same stuff. Yeah, so it's how America. So Bo Derek coming out of the water, in the braids, and living in L.A. So the same thing that's marketed to urban youth or kid. Like if you're in New York City, you see Ralph Lauren, Nautica, Dolce & Gabbana. You could be dirt poor and be a fashion expert in New York City because the signs and everything are there. And so you like what you said with capitalism, you see all of these things, and it's all bright. And it's all shiny and it's all flashy, right? And so if the people on the streets of New York, whatever else wants it, so are the same people in Cuba, Arabia, or whatever who's sitting there consuming this media, right?
Yeah.
And desire to go to the United States.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. That's how it is. So, because I know, God willing, like when we do the family trip with myself and the Alley Razors, we're going to get Yasir's wife, because she talks like Scarface, and we're going to get Yasir's wife to go to customs and say, I'm in America. I want my human right. I want it now.
We'll just see what happens if that goes down. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the other characters. So we talked about Tony Montana and Al Pacino's amazing performance. I want to talk a little bit about Gina. We haven't talked about Gina. So Gina is, of course, yani, one of the most like heart-wrenching, tragic storylines is Gina and Manny. The two of them, they are the two people, arguably, that love Tony the most, and they are the ones destroyed by him probably the most.
Yes.
Like, he destroys those people, and they do genuinely love him. At the end, he feels, he becomes so egotistical in his head that he feels he's the only person he can trust. But the people who actually care about him and love him and appreciate him and give him the respect that, William, you're saying he was striving for, is Gina and Manny. And then in the end, just the way that he corrupts those two and the way that he destroys them, I think is just it's just so painful, and it's painful to watch, especially for Gina, because Gina represents, and Manny says it, Gina represents innocence to him, right? And I think Manny represents that as well. She represents innocence to him. She's a part of him that is not corrupted by all the crap that surrounds him, right? And Manny as well. And Manny is a very interesting character, because Manny is not is even though he's his right hand man and everything, but we feel like there's a big difference between him and between everybody else that Tony is surrounded by. And there is this innocence to him, this loyalty, this love and admiration, and he is really trying like his best. He's such a he seems like a good guy despite being a criminal and all that stuff. And then in the end, like, those two people are completely destroyed by him. He shuts Manny out from his deal. He tries to control Gina, and in the end, when he finds them together and just like goes nuts and kills Manny and leads to her getting killed as well, it's just very tragic. Why do you think this was so important to have in Scarface? What do you think the effect of those characters are on Scarface? Why are they there?
I'll tell you, it's irony, because it's the old thing of what you're looking for was always right under your nose, right? So, again, wealth comes in many forms. So it could be money, but it's also your health, your family, and your friends, right? And so, so what happened was, the funny part was that he thought that all the material things would bring that, right? When technically speaking, he had already had it, right? And so that's the, so that's the tragic irony. So it's a combination of want destroying need, desire destroying fulfillment, right? So it's so if you if you weigh those types of tropes, I think that was the importance of those characters. So in a sense, you could kind of look at Manny in a sense, if you say in the hero's journey, in a sense of a magical aid, somewhat to speak. And the mentor. Within his sister, there was like you said, there was the love component, and so for him, and then his sister was also what he knew before, like you said, the old world. So they both come from the known, right? So they both become the known, and I think that part of his greed too was that he didn't want either of them to become a part of the unknown that he was in. Right? If that makes if that makes any sense, because sometimes we have a tendency to have people frozen in time. So think about it, right? You've been living in UAE all of this time. Back home, you got a friend in Jordan that you haven't seen in 10 years. That person may have changed drastically, but because you've been apart for 10 years and this is the last time you saw him or her in Jordan, they're frozen in time to you, right? And in that particular way. Maybe it's not like that for you, but for me, like I said, for me, that is. And I think that, those characters are there. One, they're a part of the journey, as you say. And I think that it's really just a thing of irony, because everything that he was looking for, he had it with those two characters.
Interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually a trope that is often repeated in criminality, in like criminality representation in the media. I mean, look at Breaking Bad, for example.
There are a lot of connections between this
but
and Breaking Bad.
There's a very specific reason why I'm talking about Breaking Bad though. And that's because I realized on my most recent rewatch that there are 2 Breaking Bad actors in this film.
Salamanca!
Yeah. Hector Salamanca is the bomb assassin, and Manny is Don Eladio.
You're kidding. What?
It's the same guy.
Yeah.
You're kidding. I didn't realize that. Wow, that's cool. I actually didn't realize, because when I saw Salamanca, immediately I'm like, Salamanca, he looks the same, but he's standing. He's just standing. And I'm like, Salamanca. And then, but I actually, Manny, like, did not
Manny
age
is
well.
Don Eladio.
He did not age well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is sort of 25 years between the 2.
Yeah, but Salamanca looks the same.
Yeah, because Salamanca was old even then.
I guess that's true. I didn't realize that's Don Eladio. That's so cool.
Yeah, and I didn't realize until I heard him speaking Spanish, and he said the word. He ended a sentence with usted, which is his iconic sentence in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Con usted.
Yeah.
Don Eladio. And I was like, when I heard him say usted, I was like expecting to hear Don Eladio, and then I didn't. And I'm like, wait, that's the same smile. Those are the same eyes. And it turns out it's the same guy.
It's true. Wow.
But I mean, yeah,
nice
totally. As William was saying, his kind of like Manny, certainly his sister, whose name is blanking me right now. Gina, sorry, yeah. Gina much more than Manny, but Manny was a more constant presence in his life than Gina was. But Gina was definitely that one reminder that he was once innocent. He was once, a working class nobody. That guy, like when he and her were between whatever happened between them that separated them and whatever, and him seeing her again.
He goes to jail and his family leaves.
Yeah. So when they see him again, the guy that she knew would have washed plates for a living and been fine with it.
Yeah.
But because he came to America, because he was under the Castro regime and all this, and because he had all of that, because he was oppressed for so long, and he sees an opportunity to have things like the same way that William was saying, you walk through the high street now and you see Ralph Lauren and all this and all that and all the other and all of these things that are shiny and everything else. He got bombarded with them from having nothing. And so he began this kind of cautionary tale, and he didn't actually underestimate. He didn't follow the advice not to underestimate the greed of the next guy, because the next guy for Tony Montana was Tony Montana tomorrow.
Yeah,
that was the problem.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Neo is asking in the comments, who's Manny? He obviously hasn't seen the film, so. Can we get F's in the chat? F's in the chat for Neo, please.
Wow. This makes you want to beat Neo up.
See? Now you get how I feel. All right. There you go. Will you stop your Save Neo campaign now that you see what I go through?
No, it's F's in the chat now. It's F's in the chat.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Well, let's okay, all right. Well, I see. Simon was the first F.
And I'm the second, damn it.
Of course. Oh man. Well, yeah. So anyway, what were we saying? Yeah. So yeah, Gina and Manny, exactly like you're saying.
Yeah. So they're the reminder, like in the same, exactly as William said, that they're reminded that they were the reminder that there was good in Tony Montana, and by the time the film was reaching its apex, they were the last reminder that Tony Montana had good in him.
Yeah.
Because when when his mother called him freaking out because Gina had disappeared or whatever, he couldn't have imagined that she had run off with Manny because he had Manny protecting her. So they're both attractive, young, they're going to have a lot in common, and they were going to get together. So we as an audience were able to see that, even on a first watch, when he gets Manny to take her home from the club, and she's like, why don't you take me out? You think that hasn't been happening the entire time? Of course it has.
Yeah.
But they've disappeared, and the assumption from Tony is if she's disappeared and I had Manny looking after her, the one man that I actually trust in the middle of all this, something really bad must have happened. So he runs and he finds her, but because he had that worry that there was something wrong with her and she was just getting her rocks off with her new husband, he saw in Manny the same guy that he saw in the club. And the only reason why he didn't shoot the guy in the club was because he didn't have confirmation that anything had actually happened between the two. But because he saw, you know, he sees Manny, and Manny has obviously a guilty look on his face because he doesn't know, he hadn't known how to bring that information to Tony, because he knew that he would have to eventually. And then Gina comes out and she's just, you know, in a robe and underwear, and Tony snaps back to that moment in the club where he wanted to shoot the guy that she was dancing with. He wanted to shoot the guy that took her to the toilet, but he couldn't. And he, you know, at that point,
his hubris wasn't so big.
Yeah, at that point, his ego hadn't swelled up to the size of a small nation. And you know, he was you know, he was the same guy that would argue over $1,500 out of 200,000 when he was bringing in, what was he saying? Was it 20 million a week at the end? Like, you know, that kind of person is literally just obsessed with their own empire. And it's I mean, it's the way that we're supposed to see it is that it's disgusting, because greed will corrupt you is essentially the story that we're telling you. But greed will also buy you a giant black leather throne with your initials on the back. Like, bruh. Like, bruh. It would also but then he snuffed out those two tiny lights in the middle of his darkness himself. And the only way that it could have gone like more like Scarface in Breaking Bad would have been when, spoiler alert for Breaking Bad that ended 7 years ago, was when they had that fight in the kitchen at the end of the series. If he had actually killed Junior and Skylar right there, that's the only way, because like that he steals Holly, and then that one tiny little light in him says, no, I actually can't do this. Tony Montana didn't have that. He just didn't have that.
But you know what, though? I think Lucas touched on something. I know, Razz, you see it as a hero's journey, but I think Lucas made a very good point that it's a cautionary tale.
It's both.
Right? Because but a hero's journey is not, like I said,
it's not the hero's journey. Again, it's a play on the hero's journey. It's a deformation of the hero's journey, right? But I think
the issue with that is the word hero.
I know, but it's just
when he's at, we should really just call it the protagonist story.
Sure, but it's just what I mean is that in order to take somebody as foul and as messed up as Tony Montana and make him so likable and make his journey so compelling to a viewer, is to put it within the mold of the hero's journey. It's the mold of the hero's journey that Tony Montana is in. And he goes through very similar steps, all right? He goes through very similar phases of the hero's journey that makes us root for him even though we shouldn't. That's what I mean. And that's why it's a cautionary tale. Because if you're going to be this kind of hero, he's no hero whatsoever. He's somebody who's going to fall. He's somebody who's going to crash.
But that's what I was saying, like in terms of the kind of circular hero's journey. I was just going to kind of go like that, because he comes from nothing, goes through all of the adversity, starts to get to a point where he can actually make something of himself, but then goes down again and becomes even more evil. You know?
Yeah, because what I mean is that if this wasn't done in this way, if this wasn't done, if he was not placed within the mold of the hero's journey, you'd reach half the film and can't wait for him to die. You won't be sitting there when he goes, and that's what makes the ending so interesting, is that you know he's gonna fall. You know he's gonna die. You know it's over for him, but you're still like, don't tell me when he grabs that gun and says, "Say hello to my little friend," and starts like cleaning house. You cheer. You go, yeah. Oh my God.
Cleaning house with the best spray and pray of all time.
Cleaning house.
The best spray and pray of all time.
Yeah.
I've got a controversial opinion in the comments here. Yasser Ali Reza says, I never liked the end scene.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that end scene. Which is,
Yes.
we're here naturally. Yeah, that end scene, man, it's insane. I actually like the one thing that I feel bad about is, like the guy that he helps the old Frank security guard. That guy goes out very quickly, and I'm like, I wish that guy survived because he was such a nice guy with the mustache, and like he gets killed off screen. It's sad.
Cautionary tale: you are the company you keep.
Yeah,
Sad.
but where I have to disagree with Yasser
Me
is
too.
that for a lot of these guys on film and real life, this is how they end up.
Yeah.
You know, so said again, not to be corny, but one of the songs that stuck with every drug dealer I knew growing up was a song by a rap group called the Ghetto Boys. It's called "My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me," right? And basically, what the song was about was that they knew that at some point their number was going to be up. You know what I'm saying? They knew that at some point this lifestyle is going to catch up to me, and like I said, it's going to be the end of me. And so when you look at this lifestyle, it's damn near like professional sports. Yeah. Very few people become Tony Montana. So a lot of the people that have tried this have either been imprisoned or died along the way.
Yeah.
The Tony Montanas are not as common. It's an aspiration, but it's not as common as what say.
Yasser is saying that it's not that he dies or how he dies; it's how it's actually filmed. Just so hyper theatrical, it does not work for me. Okay, well I see.
It's supposed to be at that point. It's supposed to be a coke dream.
Yeah, and the thing is, look, I mean, this is what makes he
goes.
Wait!
Time out. You mean hyper theatrical? Ask him, what do you think it looks like when a SWAT team kicks your door in? Well, what do you mean? Hyper?
I think he means that Tony Montana, like, that he like starts launching grenades and that like he gets shot multiple times and doesn't die. I mean, that's from the cocaine and adrenaline.
But that's from the cocaine. That's adrenaline and cocaine.
And but it just makes, and it also, I like it because this is what I like. Look, guys, I'll admit, right now as an adult, I realize that Tony Montana is a bad guy. You don't want to be Tony Montana. You want to be a functional member of society. But to be honest with you, when my father made me watch this film when I became of age, when I was 10, and he was like, here's what you need to know about life. Here's Goodfellas, here's The Godfather, and here's Scarface. These 3 films is everything you need to know about life. To me, I took it as, man, Tony Montana is a man of principle, and he's cool as hell, and I want to be Tony Montana. And I idolized him for quite a turbulent time in my teenage years. Now I'm older, but man, he just stands there and he's like, what? Ha! You want to kill me? Ha! Like, it's amazing. What are you talking about? He's not going to go down without a fight. It's cool.
I'll tell you something right now. If you hit some cocaine or some meth, and I told you to go sweet,
I don't know what these things are. I don't know what.
If you
what cocaine? What is it?
Well.
Just in case.
Okay.
يعني انه كوكاكولا يعني
كوكاكولا اوكي كوكاكولا very good.
انا ما اشربش شاي انا اشرب ازوزه انا.
I'm telling you that the people who use this stuff, I have seen them do amazing feats. So like I said, it's not, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be too far.
It's sad. I mean, like, and also it has to be.
For those of you in the chat who have Razz in their friend list, actually, if you go to her Facebook, she posted something literally this morning. That was like this meth head got like crashed his car. The police guy comes up and he's got his gun drawn, and the meth head jumps out of the back window
like an animal.
And jumps out, policeman shoots him, he goes down. He gets back up, starts running around the car, shoots him again, goes down. Like the officer had to shoot him literally 5-6 times.
Yeah,
now,
that's crazy.
Obviously, we're talking about a movie here about, a guy who manages to create all of that for himself and not get caught. Yeah, he's going to take 50 bullets.
Yeah, but it's not just that.
We've been waiting 3 hours
I also
for it
want to talk about it, even like storytelling wise. I mean, we have spent the entire film building this character, building him, building and building and building. And we know he's going to go down, but he's not supposed to go down easy. It's not going to be satisfying. Like, yeah, he could have gotten one shot in the head and that was it. But that wouldn't be, the theatrics are part of the fun. Again, I said that this is Shakespearean. It took those actors 20 minutes to die on stage. Like, oh, blade, kiss thy chest. Like, guys, nobody dies while reciting prose, right? But it's part of the fun. It's part of the fun,
You're supposed to die reciting poems. In the words of Deadpool, the Academy is watching.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. I love that Simon was saying it's called yeye. That's, by the way, it's what Tony Montana calls cocaine.
It's called yayo.
Yayo.
It's called yayo.
Yayo. It's yayo.
By the way, FYI, that line was improvised by Al Pacino. That actually was not in the script. He improvised that line. He improvised it when he was in the bathtub. He learned it like when he was trying to like learn the Cuban accent, and in the chainsaw scene he just ad-libbed it, and Brian De Palma kept that in. So, yayo.
And one of the things that I kind of liked about the representation, if we're going back to the earlier part of the film, when they're in the club and the song that everyone is dancing to is called Yayo.
Yep.
Nice. By the way, and by the way, just an information for Yasser, that scene, that big fight scene at the end. So I don't know if you guys know, but a bunch of these directors, De Palma, Spielberg, Coppola, those guys all graduated together at the same time from film school, and they were friends, and they were out making movies at the same time. Especially Spielberg and De Palma were very, very close friends, and they actually used to visit each other's sets all the time. And Spielberg visited the set of Scarface when they were shooting that big shootout at the end, and De Palma allowed him to direct a few shots in that scene, by the way. One of them most famously is the low angle shot of the guys storming the house, the mansion. That was actually directed by Steven Spielberg. When he just passed by, directed a few Scarface scenes and left, because that's his life. Anyway, so that's an interesting little tidbit. I actually love that final scene. I mean, it's fun, man. It's one of the most quotable scenes in the world. And it's classic. I don't know what you're talking about, Yasser. You're being grumpy man yells at clouds, honestly.
And now we need F's in the chat for Yasser.
Yeah. Another tidbit, by the way, about this whole like criminal stuff that we're talking about here. I know so much about this movie. Like I could start telling you guys about stuff that happened in the end. By the way, how he named like a lot of his companies Montana, like Montana Corporation, Montana Travel, I don't know what. I don't know
Montana
if
Management, Montana Real Estate,
Montana Management. William, I don't know if you know this, but back in the day, Saddam Hussein actually set up an enterprise that he was using to allegedly launder money that was called Montana Management. Are you aware of this? Google that stuff. Google that stuff. Yeah, by the way, like he was obsessed. He's another person who was obsessed with Scarface, and with the character of Tony Montana.
Listen, I don't care how many years it's been, okay? You probably don't want to liken yourself to Saddam Hussein in any way on the internet right now.
I didn't.
I said he's another person that's obsessed. That's you sharing a common trait with Saddam Hussein.
I meant that a lot of people we were saying that how a lot of people he's such an iconic character that a lot of people admire. Stop trying to make me go to jail. Look, it's the second time. All right, don't strike out. Okay. You're living with a full count. You're living with a full count, Lucas. Okay. Because I'm taking you down with me, buddy. All right, I'll bring you back here. I don't care. I'll send my assassins.
Nah, man, a lot of people wanted to emulate that film.
Yeah.
What I'm saying? What Tony what Tony Montana was able to achieve. A lot of people wanted to emulate it, man. I mean, everybody. I'm probably even, my current president, right? Like I said, everybody. Donald, like I said, Jay-Z said it, even one of his rap songs, right?
Why are we so drawn to him? Why are we so drawn to him? Like, I was drawn to him because he has so much drive. The drive to me is the thing that and the principles. that he's a man of principles. It's because, and that's the important of that scene that we didn't mention, by the way. It's the fact that he doesn't he doesn't allow Salamanca. I'm gonna call him Salamanca. Doesn't allow Salamanca to blow up the car with the children. We see him multiple times like represent that he has principles, that he has morals about loyalty or his interpretation of it. All of this stuff makes him very fascinating. But for me, it's his drive. It's just the fact that he's like, I'm gonna do it, and then he goes out and does it no matter what. That's somebody that people might like think like, who is this guy? What is he saying? He's not gonna do it, and then he ends up doing it. And there's something that is very satisfying about that. Something that we want to be. We want to be people who push it to the limit. We are people who go the extra mile, that achieve our dreams, that have drive, that have dreams, that we follow through on them, and we fight for them. We don't give up. It's that ambition and that drive. It's something that is, I think, very fascinating.
I'm going to tell you what it is. But it's the whole underdog story. So it'll be a similar charisma to what you see in the Rocky films.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying? So it's that kind of similar charisma where the person who wasn't expected to make it, the underdog, and that's something that's easy for a lot of us to identify with.
Yeah. Yeah, true. And another thing, by the way, that's really creepy about Scarface that I want to mention before we wrap up here, is that you guys know the scene with the girl who that bathtub scene with the chainsaw. Outside, Manny is in the car, and there's this woman in a blue bikini, right? That he's flirting with, that runs away and stuff. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So, by the way, this lady disappeared right after the filming of this movie, and there was this whole mystery around her. She was part of an Unsolved Mysteries docu-series, and while she was working on the movie, apparently she'd had a breakdown on set. She was seeing like one of the violent scenes. I'm not sure which one, and she told her family that. That she was involved in money laundering and that people wanted to kill her. Like, she started to panic and she quit the film. She was actually supposed to stay in the movie. She was supposed to show up. Remember later when he shows up with another blonde girl? It's supposed to be her, but it's not. She's like an extra. And it's supposed to be her in bed with him. But she quit the film, and then she vanished in July, like a few months before the movie was released. They had this like documentary, Unsolved Mysteries. Like, look it up. Like, it was in the 90s. And like, her sister is apparently like searching for her and stuff like that. So interesting stuff. It's a mystery. Like, I found that's very interesting when I was researching the making of the film. So yeah, where's Tammy? Where's Tammy? Like, I don't know. But yeah, so man, Scarface. Look, again, it's Al Pacino. It's Al Pacino in, I believe, one of his all-time best performances. Just iconic character. Just a big part of our pop culture, and it's very interesting to go back and watch it right now. I actually enjoyed it a lot. Because this film does take some heat. You saw some people in the comments. There are people who don't regard it as high as other films, but I find it like one of the most entertaining, fun crime films of the 20th century. This is why it's on our list. It's I really enjoyed it, and it was pretty cool. I like Scarface. Yeah. I like Tony Montana.
It's a masterpiece.
You cockroaches. But that's cool. So final words, guys, before we wrap this up?
Yeah, if you ain't seen this film yet, watch it. You're missing out.
Huh?
No, not to you. To anyone watching now that hasn't seen the film yet, they're missing out.
Definitely.
It's a life experience.
Definitely.
Well,
William.
My last statement will be to the studios: you do not need to remake this.
No.
Oh God! Don't even. Oh no! You have to say it.
Jordan,
why would you? No.
You do not need to remake this.
It's so good.
Leave it alone. It's timeless.
Are they going to remake it?
No, I heard rumors. I
mean, even though technically this film is a remake, huh? It is a remake, but I would argue it's the best remake ever made.
It's the best. Yeah, come on, no.
And that's why, by the way, when the movie ends, it's dedicated to Ben Hart and Howard Hawks, because they're the writer and director of the 1932 Scarface, which follows a little bit, but it's very different, and it's definitely better. Yes. I would say.
No. You can't remake this.
I hope not. Okay, don't remake this. Now that
you've said it, they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it.
We're gonna come after you, William. If they remake this, I'm gonna come after you. Okay, so it's time for our next film. Before that, just a very, very big announcement that from now on, like we're moving the movie club discussions to monthly to allow for more people to watch, and because I'd like to go back to making reviews of stuff. Actual reviews. So we're gonna be doing a movie like every month is gonna be that film's month, and I encourage all of you guys to post about that film, to discuss it in the movie club, to post videos, images, whatever. We're gonna have like 1 month long film. I'll post some trivia and stuff, and I would just want to make like we appreciate a film every month, and then we discuss it, giving people more time to watch it, giving me time to breathe. And yeah, so it's gonna be every month. So it's gonna be the last Tuesday of every month. That's what it's gonna be. So like this is the last Tuesday of June. So our next session will be at the end of July. And now we're gonna see what July's movie is. You guys ready?
Caddyshack.
Let's see. And go, head on over to the movie club on Facebook. We have a Facebook group. Head there and just post whatever movies you want that I can put in Ardu-Titu. No problem. I'll just add your films. We have a lot. Some people have made suggestions that I've added, and some people have suggested new things. In any case, it's time for the new movie. Guys, can I get a drum roll? Drum roll. He's so cute. I love him. Okay. So July's movie is awesome. Hold on. Give it a sec.
I can't see it.
Give it a second. Hello.
It's too much white. Oh my God, yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is our film for July. This is on the top 100 list, top 100 films of all time on IMDb. Definitely on the 1001 movies to watch before you die. It's actually on 2 lists.
My personal favorite actor and my personal favorite movie that he is in. Amazing.
All right. Well, we'll see you in July. So this is our film for July. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much, Lucas and William. Guys, help spread the word. We need members. So share the stream. Things are starting to open up. Do watch parties. Watch One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest together, and join the discussion. Like, share, and subscribe to Razz Reviews, and please join the Facebook group, the Movie Club by Razz Reviews.
Link in the description down below.
Yeah, it's in the description. Discuss, talk, suggest movies, and I'll see you guys next month. Don't forget that this exists. You have a month now. A lot of people, I had work, I didn't have time. No more excuses. Watch the movies. That's a challenge to you, like a book club. Okay? Well, thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you next month. Take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.